A Rope Over the Abyss, some insight into ET motives and goals, touching on the human soul and eternity, written by Patrick C. If you could look directly into these creatures' eyes, you'd realize that every detail of your life, no matter how personal, how mundane, how minute, is known to them. Unless a person has been through the trauma of an abduction, they cannot comprehend how these entities can strip the mind and soul and as easily as they can strip the clothes off a body. They scan details of a person's life with such facility that they make you feel as if you are an interesting piece of lint caught between their toes. In the blink of an eye, these beings devastate all personal freedom, all sense of privacy, and all prospects for living a normalized existence. A person's life is never the same again. He or she is changed forever. This is a letter from an abductee to Linda Moulton Howe. So here we attempt to offer some insight possibly to some of the aliens' motives and goals, and it will also touch on religion, death, and soul and eternity. And the writer says, I have memories of being from childhood, always at night, then waking up with a blood-soaked pillow, or dreaming about nuclear explosions a lot, or traveling through a gray-white matrix, a wormhole, also a lot, with crisscrossing lines originating from the center. Waking up in a standing position, looking down at my feet, which were bare, and looking up to discover I was in a desert landscape with some small mounds and hills and sparse grassy vegetation. It wasn't a dream. I was awakened from a dream, and I was around 5 or 6 years old at the time. After a few moments of adjusting to my new surroundings, large car and house-sized chunks of jagged sandy-colored boulders started impacting the ground and rapidly closing the distance in front of me. I watched everything go black as a huge rock landed on me, but curiously there was no physical impact of something hitting my body, just the blackness of being inside a rock. I felt no different than before and just stood in blackness for a few moments, and that was the last memory of that incident. Now I have to say here that at one point I had met a young man from, a monk from Russia, and he had come to Greece to go to some health spas, because when he was in Russia in the cold winter months he would take care of the horses and cattle, and he at a very early age got arthritis. But anyway, he told me that he and his brothers were having nightmares every night because they were not baptized until they were 18 years old. The only way that they could stop the nightmares is by saying the Lord's Prayer, Our Father, which art in heaven. That's the only way, because they had nightmares every single night. So that's just one thing to keep in mind here. It could be that this man, when he was a child, was having nightmares. Nobody taught him how to pray, to protect himself. Now, going back to this, soul containers, these beings refer to human bodies as containers, which will be discussed in greater detail later on. There's going to be important places on our souls being kept inside these containers for a specific length of time, he says. They have been concerned with what we have been doing, the wars and so forth. They are afraid that the souls will be damaged by our containers. And one of the MJ12 guys talked about an analogy. He said that when you put something in a container and you pour it out, there's always some residue that remains. Something remains in that soul, so when you pass the soul on in different containers, it picks up the residue of all the different containers it has been in, and a little of each remains and stays throughout. I guess here there is an eternity, there's no end. I asked him, does the soul wear out after so many recycles? He said no, the soul never wears out. The Supreme Being makes sure that that doesn't happen. Again, this is just conjecture of this writer. It doesn't mean that we have reincarnation. We have one life, and then we go for judgment. But he says, the notion of the soul picking up residues may explain why we have memories of past lives. Again, I'm just giving this to you as information. I am not agreeing with this. It may also explain why, after spending thousands of years and who knows how many wretched lifetimes trying to work out the karma from one or more evil incarnations, one can still feel the enticing charm of the dark side. The seven deadly sins are like predators. They've got you before you realize they are there. Some abductees researchers, such as Dr. Leo Sprinkle, a Wyoming psychologist, and Harvard University psychologist Dr. John Mack, stumbled onto what appears to be a continuity of the same EBENs, EBENs. That's short for extraterrestrial biological entities, or maybe other great types, present from human life to human life, because the same alien being comes up in past life regressions at births and at deaths. So the soul is tracked from lifetime to lifetime with purpose. The soul is put into a new container after each cycle. Sometimes the container has a defect, and these same beings will intervene to remove the soul from that old body and put it inside a new cloned body, perhaps a special type of energy that is produced when you marry a soul to a biological container, something of great value to them. What do you put in a container? Something of value, something that is dangerous and needs contain perhaps something you plan to consume at a date or late. Alien intentions, the writer writes, Lynn Buchanan, a remote viewer for the U.S. government, now declassified remote viewing project, was tasked with categorizing and determining the intention of aliens. The psychic-friendly ones want us to develop our abilities and become a force in the universe. The unfriendly psychic ones want us dead, gone. They want us wiped off the planet to the last person, she said. The ETs that have more psychic abilities than we have it much stronger, but they don't have any range. They have to be right over you. Our ability is weak, however, and you can see across the universe as well as we can see across a room. They can see across the universe as we can see across a room. We can see the past, we can see the future. We have learned from this method how to understand the plans and intentions of other people, and that's ETs included. The fact is, when we start developing our psychic abilities and become strong, when we go out into the universe, into space and space travel, we will wind up being a very powerful force in the universe. Our friends want to stay friends with that powerful force, and our enemies out there, those who don't like us, they're afraid of us. She says, they want us gone already, right now. Perhaps this is why we see evidence of cyclical mass extinctions, a reset of mankind back to the Stone Age prior to becoming an intergalactic competitor or threat. And we abductees are caught in the middle of a series of ongoing events that will one day prove historically significant to the future of the Earth. Unfortunately, because of our continuing non-voluntary interactions with these beings, we have, in a sense, become victims of both sides of the phenomena. On the one hand, we're used by the aliens for their own purposes, whatever those purposes may be, and if we speak out, we risk ridicule from the public, and in some cases, possible harassment and or intimidation by government and military personnel. Source is by Linda Moulton Howe presentation. And the reaping, the abductee is confronted with a greater truth, a burden of knowledge, abandoned and betrayed by his or her own government with nowhere to turn for comfort or understanding. In a cruel turn of events, he or she has become a problem that must be monitored and dealt with, deadly secrets that are kept at all costs. Some look for protection in a religion or deity, and the following should disabuse you of that notion. David Paulides, Missing 411. Let's talk about religion, because a lot of you have said in various posts that if he had just said something, then it would have saved his life. If he would have just said, Jesus save me, or God save me, it would have saved his life. And I agree on that. Let's remember that the Christian Orthodox monks and nuns who pray every single night, they don't sleep. While we sleep, they're awake praying, have had many an experience of hand-to-hand combats with entities, demonic entities, hand to hand. It's not like a nightmare where we have a bad dream. They are actually fighting hand to hand. So a demon can manifest itself physically. Now, going back to this, I'm going to tell you about, the writer says, some cases from my books that may enlighten you greatly on that subject. Jared Aterado, 3 years old, went missing along the Big South Trail in Colorado. Jared's dad, Alin, is deeply religious. 10-year-old boy Bobby Bizup was attending a Catholic camping retreat called Camp St. Malo at the Rocky Mountains National Park. He disappeared, was found later the following year, deceased. Just remnants of him, small pieces, up to the side of a mountain, again from a religious site. So what's going on? Dr. Maurice Damez went missing in the Pike National Forest of Central Colorado. He was a pastor. He had a PhD in theology. He was in charge of several churches before he retired, and he disappeared. I wrote about a Yosemite trip that a church group from Los Angeles took, a member that was last in line coming from the Yosemite Falls, and he disappeared, a highly religious man never found. So what does all this mean? That a small fraction of what I'm writing about, what I've written about, so the people that are pushing the theory, if you're highly religious, you're going to be saved. I don't think so. There was a leader of the Protestant Diocese of Montana that disappeared in Glacier National Park. He was found weeks later, deceased. Now, who created Jesus? What was the scientific community have to say about the impact of religious beliefs? And their research found that those with religious or spiritual beliefs appear to suppress the brain network used for analytical thinking in order to engage the network for empathetic thinking. In essence, it limits their brain function and capacity. Equally, those who were non-religious showed they suppressed their empathetic thinking for analytical thinking. In essence, it limits their brain function and capacity. So a mix of the two is something to keep in mind to engage the maximum function and capacity of the human brain. Interestingly, the extraterrestrials that have been interacting with our government take credit for Jesus, reported that 2,000 years ago his ancestors planted a human creature on Earth to assist in the inhabitants of Earth with developing a civilization. And this information was only vague, and the exact identity or background on this Homo sapien was not obtained. Linda Moulton Howe claims to have seen the document personally. She says, these extraterrestrial biological entities manipulate DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapiens. 2,000 years ago, these Ebens created a being on this planet to teach Homo sapiens about love and nonviolence. Linda believes this confirms that Christ was an extraterrestrial. Again, I don't agree with her. I'm just giving you this as information as to how some people think. Now, to make matters more confusing, later the blonde aliens claimed that it was not the Ebens who created Christ, but a science mission in order to stop the event in 2012 that was going to annihilate surface life on the planet. They had to go back 2,000 years to avoid impacting something else in the timeline and create Christ's event. So regardless of the claims being made about the event, 2,000 years ago, these beings do possess, manipulate, and wage war through the use of time travel, so anything is indeed possible. And we can be gleaned, what can be gleaned is the fact that they believe in both a supreme being and the evil one, God and devil. How does this shape their reality and how they view their relationship to the humans? God and the devil? I asked Sherman, is there a devil out there somewhere? And Sherman answered, there is an evil force. Even the Ebens talk about it. There is a supreme being, and then there is the evil one, the evil entity, and the Ebens are as scared of that entity, the evil entity, as we are of the devil. And I asked, where's the devil? And Sherman said, I don't know, but what worries me is that if the Ebens are scared of him, I'm damn scared of him, because the Ebens can control anything. And if they believe in the same supreme being we call God, and they say there is an evil one, then there really is a devil. Would the devil be equal to and oppose the the positive God? Are there two gods? Sherman answered, I don't know. You can think about that forever. There's another thing that puzzles me. The Ibans say that everything that occurs in our time span has occurred before. I guess it means that we're just right in the middle of a huge big circle and it just goes round and round again. And the way I see it, the Earth was created about 55 billion years ago. From now, the sun is going to expand and Earth will be engulfed in it and destroyed, and everything goes back to a big bang, and then everything starts over again. I asked, when the Yellow Book talked about the Supreme Being that created the universe, did it say anything about parallel dimensions, parallel timelines, or anything else like that? Sherman said, no, nothing. The aliens talked about the vastness of the universe, that there are life forms all over. It talked about a supreme being creating the souls and creating the containers and distributing the souls to the containers. To the Ibans, it's just basic fact. The new race, Sherman said, some abductees also say that the main reason for the animal mutilations, human abductions, has to do with creation of hybrid species, but no one knows. These hybrids are supposed to replace the current Homo sapien container model. Sherman said, maybe all I know is that Ibans are supposed to have manipulated the DNA in primates long before humans were created, so there must have been a series of experiments like Neanderthal before Cro-Magnon, and Neanderthals are gone, so who knows what is on the agenda for humans. Linda Moulton Howe presents. The people who live on Earth, those who will survive the changes to come, will be evolving into a new species of being. I'm not referring to now to the time travelers from the future who are also here. That was something that was necessary because Earth's governments got hold of dangerous technology that greatly altered Earth's future for the worse. And remember the mistake that was made that I told you about a while back. Some type of technology fell into the wrong hands, and the future travelers were sent back in time to change that. Don't know if it's been changed, Linda Porter said in 1995. Now, what about the New World Order? Who to try to get us under influence of Lucifer, something like that? The war between good and evil? Well, yes, I think you'd have to be blind not to see that it's already happening. That's not future, that's now. People are saying there is going to be a war, like people are saying there's going to be a World War III. Lynn Buchanan interview says, I think there's going to be, well, I think that time, over time, it's been proven that wars have only a temporary effect, and I think that this time they've learned. I think that the first salvo you might say, is a war, in this war, is to poison certain genomes in the human system, and I think it's my personal belief that that's what's happening. Man is a rope stretched between the animal and superhuman, a rope over an abyss, a dangerous crossing, a dangerous wayfaring, a dangerous looking back, a dangerous trembling and halting. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal, said Friedrich Nietzsche. And this is by Patrick C. on Bended Reality. Again, I don't agree with most of this, but faith in Christ, of course, works miracles. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.